Thank you, Mona and Andrew. If you could identify yourself and your institution, if you have one, before you ask your question. And those in the back room, if you have questions, could you put them on a card and give them to the interns, please? First question. Yes, sir. And you can address it to either or both.
My name is Tariq Suwaid. I work for the World Bank, but I'm not speaking in the name of the World Bank today. So my real motivation to be here is I'm a Lebanese citizen. I monitor Lebanese politics closely. So I really appreciate the discussion so far. It's very interesting and informative. I believe that one element, important element, when talking about the rapprochement or relationship between the Lebanese and Syrian relationship has been ignored so far, which is the Syrian-Israeli relationship. And despite all the highs and lows of this relationship, and probably today is going through a high stress or a low stage, everybody have seen over the past 40 years, or nearly since the occupation of the Golan Heights, that those areas have been quite stable, despite that the Syrian regime was able to smuggle weapons through Lebanon over the years, destabilize the Iraqi scene, harbor some of the Palestinian institutions inside Hamas, Fatah, and through that destabilize Gaza. Yet it chose not to destabilize the Golan Heights occupied areas. And I see in this as a very strategic choice that the Syrians have made, but also an interest in the Israelis through the years not to change the Syrian regime and open it up to alternative whereby an Islamic group could take over, or chaos, the way we see it in Iraq, could happen. What make me really stress this element is, in fact, also a recent intervention or a recent talk by Walid Jumblat in a newspaper recently, saying that they made us involved in a game that is bigger than us. And it's very symbolic, I think, the way he says it, but also meaningful in a way that in 2005, the scene was really different. A major change was being overseen.
Could you wrap it up so we
Sure.
could get our
A
comments from our
major
speakers?
change was being overseen to take place in the region. But today, that change is not the same. And Syria will never be singled as a change, but only a change in regime in Syria will only take place as a bigger change in the region that involves Iran and other players. And I think Saudi Arabia and the Lebanese politicians have realized this and know that a Syrian change will not happen. And I would like your views on the Israeli-Syrian relationship and how it plays in this recent rapprochement between Lebanon and Syria.
Okay. Either of you like to comment?
I think you should comment as well, but I'll take a quick, I think, the fact that Lebanon has served as a proxy arena for Israel and Syria to play out their war is well known. And so, I didn't raise it. I was really more looking at the Lebanese-Syrian relationship. From my perspective, the rapprochement is, again, Lebanon understanding that it is this small country surrounded by giants, and it needs to figure out a way to survive. I do not equate rapprochement with Syria with ceding Lebanese sovereignty or ceding Lebanon's interests to Syria. I think the Lebanese are simply looking for a way to move forward. From my perspective, these conflicts are deeply interconnected. And also from my perspective is why I believe that movement in terms of whether through probably through indirect talks, a restarting of the negotiations between Syria and Israel is critical for Lebanon's long-term stability. You cannot have long-term stability in Lebanon without some sort of resolution to the conflict between Syria and Israel.
Yes, the conflicts are intertwined. I wasn't sure exactly what you were talking about in terms of, you were saying there's some sort of indecision about whether to or there has been recently some indecision about or about bringing down the Assad regime, or the Israelis guaranteeing it somehow. And I wasn't exactly sure what you were talking about.
Yes, I was saying that the change in regime in Syria is not going to happen today. Syria will not be single for a change in regime unless it's a bigger change in the Middle East. And I think the
Right.
Lebanese players have realized that, as well as the
Sure.
Saudis.
Sure. Yes. I think that there is an attempt now, I think it was a smart diplomatic attempt to try and get Syria to break itself or to bend itself away from Iran. And many people argue that will only come in the form of a peace treaty with Israel. They're probably right. But as their relationship, though, the ultimate objective, I think, of the United States, and I think this, also the Israelis as well, is to introduce some kind of tension or to break the relationship between Syria and Hezbollah, Syria and Iran and Hezbollah. How that exactly happens, I don't know. I think for the moment, diplomacy will be the track that is pursued, and then after that, however, if the relationship gets deeper, I don't know what kind of solution people will advocate. I think it's also kind of ironic that, and I sort of uncovered this in writing the book, and that is that for all the talk about regime change during the Bush administration, it was actually Israel that saved Syria in that debate, which is part of a larger discussion, which doesn't involve what we're talking about here today. So, thanks.
My name is John Moore, and I don't work for any institution, just my wife. But I'd like to address the question of, in the hereditary Syrian Arab Republic, the father lost the Golan, and the son says he wants it back. But there are many say that Lebanon is even more important than the Golan to the son, even more important than getting the Golan. Where do you stand on this issue, and do you think that is the explanation for why Syria does so many different things in
Lebanon? It's very hard to get inside of Bashar al-Assad's head, in case you haven't figured that out by now. Syrian motivations. Well, the Israeli occupation of the Golan has a lot of domestic implications for Syria and the way it's ruled. That's part of a much bigger discussion, but it involves basically two things: is that it allows the Alawite-dominated regime to rule by martial law, and also, most importantly, and I think this is actually what I learned from being in Syria, is to put off reforms indefinitely. Reforms just don't happen, or they'll kind of half happen, or they'll be issued and then the executive orders won't be put into place and so on. Now, what this means when this happens over the course of 10 years and as society changes is that everything becomes illegal. And then you have to pay bribes to guess who in order to carry out your everyday affairs. And that's the way real life is in Syria. And this is the mortar that holds the whole system together as it opens up to the outside world. It's a very, very lucrative business, guys. I've never seen so much cash in my life during the time I lived in Syria. So many Ben Franklins in one place. And it wasn't Syrian money. So that is a very important motivator. I think he does want, however, I think he probably would like the return of the Golan, but it would depend on what he would get for it. I think he would probably like a lot of control over Lebanon. I think Syria sees Lebanon as its soft underbelly, or whatever else is oftentimes regarded as its strategic backyard, or I don't know. It's also a beautiful country, and and there are a lot of historic ties. I think it's very important what Mona pointed out about the familiar ties. But ultimately, I don't know what Bashar al-Assad is thinking. I think we can only really understand him by his choices. And I think so far his choices regarding Lebanon are looking pretty mixed, not that great from where we're standing. I think from where they're sitting, they see themselves really in the driver's seat. And I don't know how you talk them down from that. I mean, that's one of these times when you thank God you're not in government. But I think it's going to be hard.